I see you coming with this like intensely scared and fierce expression in your face. And you were roaring at me and you ran past me, opened the window and tried to escape through the window. We live in the second floor, so you wouldn't have died if you jumped, but it was high enough to be pretty scared.
Today, I'm very excited to interview my wife, Ellen Seligman, about her experiences of living with someone with bipolar for, gosh, about 20 years now. Now, Ellen is an opera director. She also helps professional musicians play better through sort of working with their bodies and posture and breathing and things like that. She teaches meditation too, and she's my true love. So here we go.
Hello. It's nice to be part of your podcast.
Thanks for coming along and agreeing. It's going to be interesting. So here we go. My first question is going to be, can you tell us a bit about how we met and how that all sort of played out with bipolar?
Yeah, we met, is it 19 or 20 years ago? I can't remember.
20.
Uh, yeah, actually on Christmas Eve in the jungle of Mexico. We were both on a meditation retreat. I had just showed up and you'd been there for a while. And I think we immediately took a liking to each other. And it didn't really take long before we were an item, did it? Which is nice, very romantic. Um, but in sort of in relation with bipolar, I guess I can't really remember when you told me that you had bipolar. But I do know that when you told me, it was almost like it didn't really matter in a way. Like you were basically telling me that you were taking lithium, which is a salt, and that took care of it, and there wasn't any more to it in a way. As far as I remember it, we never really talked about you having bipolar for the first years of our relationships, hardly at all. I mean, I remember you told me that you had come off your medication and that didn't go very well. Actually, I think we met not so long after that. But that had led to you deciding that you were always going to stay on lithium and take it for the rest of your life, and that was kind of problem solved.
So when did bipolar sort of become more of a thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I think that it must have been, when you came in contact with some homeopaths, I think, who were sort of telling you about the side effects of lithium and how toxic lithium could be, and we were sort of starting to link it with some sort of physical things that were happening to you. You were often very tired. You had days when you just had to stay in bed and you were like all gray and didn't really function. And I don't think we'd really connected the dots before that time that it could be side effects of your medication. And I think that's kind of when I remember us talking about it and considering, different options, I guess, properly. Um, yeah. But, and then that led to that we decided that you were going to try to reduce your medication. And we knew so little. It was basically just something that we decided because we thought maybe you really weren't bipolar or that you could do without medication after so long, or I don't know, I can't remember exactly how we were thinking it was going to go well. We just started and one thing took the next. And it wasn't a very good idea, was it?
So what happened?
Well, I mean, you started reducing your medication, and you have to remind me if I remember wrongly, but we were in touch with this Canadian company who provided sort of support with supplements, and they had people we could chat to, whatever, and they were promising a lot, about how they could help uh, people come off medication. They obviously had done it, or at least that's what they said, and they were offering sort of phone support, and we sort of went with it. And you started reducing your medication at the rate that we at that time thought was quite slow. With hindsight, it wasn't very slow, compared to what we know now. And I guess in the beginning, we felt it went really well. But I do remember you becoming very emotional at times and quite scared. But we were sort of like just determined that this was going to go well, and just continued basically. And you came off completely. And that's when, the shock really hit me, and because you basically became very ill, like mentally very ill.
And then what
Mm.
happened?
Well, what happened was that you had an episode, and it happened, as I remember it, like very, very quickly and sort of like out of the blue. For me, it was out of the blue, and for you too, I think, and which is surprising, knowing what we know, that we hadn't talked about that option at all, that you might actually have an episode. I don't think we had really talked very much about how an episode could manifest, what happened, how it was. That hadn't really been something we talked very much about, and I was utterly unprepared for how that could manifest and what to do. And it just happened. I mean, we could have seen the signs probably. You were a lot more emotional, you were hallucinating a little bit before, but then after some weeks completely off lithium, then all of a sudden one day you are just starting to fade out from this reality. And I remember very clearly the day when it really sort of happened, because I was going to Sweden. I was going to take a plane to Sweden to teach a course there, and but it was very clear that something was up with you. I remember you were standing by the kitchen sink. You were going to wash a plate, and then I came back into the kitchen half an hour later, and you were still standing there with the same plate. And I realized there's something very, very, very wrong here. And you were very scared, and you started telling me that you were like in other dimensions, and things were happening. And so what we actually decided was that you were going to come with me to Sweden, remember? Which was a terrible idea, but we took the train. No, we took the tram down to the train station that was going to take us to the airport. And on the way there, I realized this is not going to happen. You were completely in a different world, and it was like not really possible to get in contact with you. You were sort of gone, and we had to just cancel the whole thing and come back.
I thought I was being kidnapped, and I was in like different realities, and there were like aliens, and I was completely not just hallucinating within this reality, but jumping to other realities, and just completely mad, completely manic, psychotic, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah. And from the outside, it just looked like you were vacant. You were just gone in a way, and uh, it looked like you just didn't move a lot, or you were just kind of like frozen. Um, and it was, Lucas, our son, was there, and it was very scary for him. Luckily, he was going to go away with his aunt. So, but it was just tumbling down all of a sudden, and you were going. mad completely, and I didn't even know that that was an option at that time. We hadn't talked about it at all. What if that happens? We just started happening, and at the time, I thought the most important thing was to avoid that you went to hospital, because then they would put you back on the medication that we had worked so hard to take you off, right? And that was like the last thing you wanted, and had to be avoided, otherwise, it was like a failure. So that was where I was coming from, how can we make this go away without contacting the hospital? and and also, I was on the hotline with this Canadian company, many hours time difference, and stuff, and so hard to get hold of them. And I was desperate, and they were saying, it's just detox, just keep going, just wait, it'll pass. This is all okay. And so that was kind of what I thought was happening, and I couldn't confer with you because you were gone.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and just to sort of throw in some facts for the listeners, this was 14 years ago, I think. So it was a long time ago.
mm,
And we did actually think that we were getting help because we had help from this Canadian company who
yeah,
specialized in helping people reduce or come off medication, but it was just all going really badly. Over to
yeah.
you.
And it was so long distance, and they didn't know. I remember I called this sort of emergency line, and she was like, this is just for emergencies. And I completely lost it. It was like, if this is not an emergency, I don't know what is. He's barking mad. You were walking around like holding your hands like this a lot, and you were falling off the bed, and I kind of had to almost carry you up back, and like while things were happening. And but you were in and out of it in the beginning, remember? And so this was happening. It was all very scary. Um, but then it was kind of like you were back. And I remember we even went for a walk and we talked about it. Oh, wow, that was intense. And we were kind of laughing and whatever. But then it started coming back. But there was this situation. I was sitting in the sofa in our living room, and I was writing to someone saying, "Oh, well, Ollie was having this episode, and luckily now it's over. It's very scary, but thank God it's over." And as I was writing that, I see you coming with this like intensely scared and fierce expression in your face, and you were roaring at me, and you ran past me, opened the window, and tried to escape through the window. We live in the second floor, so you wouldn't have died if you jumped, but it was high enough to be pretty scared. And I rushed after you and tried to pull you back from the window. And remember, you almost slipped out of your jeans, and
Because I'd
it
lost
was
so
just
much
terrible.
weight. Because
Yeah,
I'd
you had
lost so
lost
much
weight, so
weight.
you were skinnier as well. And I
No,
remember there were
I
people standing on the pavement looking up, and I was like, "He's going mad," because you were shouting for help, and I had to sort of sort it out and then pull you back, and then you tried to escape through the stairs, and I ran after you and got you back, and so I realized I couldn't handle it all on my own. So we got lots of friends in to sort of look after you.
And this
Uh,
was all in this quest to avoid going into hospital.
yeah,
But
yeah.
inside my sort of crazy mind at this stage, all I wanted was to go into hospital. But we've
Mm.
been spending so much effort and energy to try to reduce this medication and come off it. It just seemed like hospital was like it was kind of like admitting defeat, and we weren't willing to do that.
Yeah, and I think also because we hadn't really talked about, we didn't have a plan for if this happened, like unbelievably enough. We hadn't talked about that. So I didn't even, we didn't agree on anything, what do we do? What's the plan? So I thought that was what you wanted, to avoid to be put on medication again. So we spent a few days having friends over who rotated in looking after you. I had to find somewhere else for my son to live. I had lots of migraines. It was probably the worst time of my life. I remember popping pills and trying to survive, like popping migraine pills to sort of, but it kept coming back. I was so stressed. And you were in all these different dimensions, more and more gone every day. And I decided to contact the psychiatric ambulance team who came over to our flat. Um, they were very cool. They were super cool. Talked to you as well, and it was almost like you were like pulling yourself a little bit together when they were there. But they knew that too. They were very cool. They understood that, and they gave me some antipsychotic pills that, and sort of said that I could give that to you when we wanted to, if it got out of hand. And
Even more out
after
of hand.
it was already completely out of hand, but we were thinking that we were just going to have to ride it out. And then it would sort of, you would come back, but that just didn't happen. So I can't remember exactly how long. Was it a week maybe or something
I think it was
after?
5 days. I think we figured that out. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then I remember coming to you in your bed.
In fact, no, I think it was the next day. I remember it was the next day because I'd had enough. And I
Yeah.
was sort of lucid enough to know that these antipsychotics would probably work. And I just said, just give me the pills, give me the pills.
No, that's not what happened.
Was it not? That's so weird. That's what I remember. That's so what happened.
Yeah. No, that's not what happened. I don't think you even knew about it. But I remember coming to you in when you were in bed, and I said, "We're going to take you out of this now." We,
I
you
remember
know,
that. Yeah.
yeah. You're gonna take this pill, and it's all gonna go. You know, it's gonna end. We have to do this now. And you were like, you weren't difficult at all. You weren't against taking medication at all. I do, and funnily enough, I didn't really know that. I thought that your agenda was no medication because that's what had been trying to do. But you were super willing to take medication; was not a problem at all.
I was kind of
And
battered down by that stage, I think.
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, day after, you started getting better very quickly. Hmm.
Yeah,
After
I've
the
always
psychosis.
been lucky in that respect, is that olanzapine antipsychotics have always worked on me when I've started to go into psychosis or been in a deep psychosis, and I'm very grateful for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, to give a little bit of context to this, we were doing this at a time when very few people were doing it. Like now, it's talked about more about people lowering
Hmm.
medication and whatever. And we had tried to get the help of psychiatrists. We'd had homeopathic help. We'd basically had all the wrong help, quite honestly.
Hmm.
But also, we were really kind of dug in because it had kind of become our mission, hadn't it? We'd kind of lost, well, we hadn't lost our oversight because we never really had any. We didn't really know about it, but we kind of got stuck into this rut of, we've got to try and make this work.
Yeah, we did, and we really thought it was going to work. We just really believed that it was going to work. So we didn't pay any attention to the fact that it might go wrong. Which with hindsight is incredible that we didn't, but we didn't. We just kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
we're very optimistic without much reason to be. So
But
yeah.
we'd also, I mean, pretty much everyone we'd spoken to, apart from the initial psychiatrist, who I didn't get along with, pretty much everyone we'd spoken to had told us, "Yeah, you can do this." It was incredible how certain these so-called professionals were in an environment that's incredibly uncertain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We were promised a lot, both by homeopaths and this Canadian company, and yeah, other people around. There was definitely a push towards coming off medication and people thinking that they had the answer and could help us. And yeah, we didn't really have any reason to doubt them in a way. We didn't know.
It's funny. It's like you only know how bad things can go once they've gone that bad. It's really hard to actually preempt it, particularly
Mm.
because there was really no information on the internet or around about this at all.
Yeah, yeah, and when we got together, you were in a good place. You took your medication. It was pretty balanced. You didn't have much episodes. You didn't have episodes. You hardly had mood swings. Like some probably, but very minor. So you were very well functioning, and I had never seen you in an episode.
Mm.
So I didn't really know the risk of what the reducing medication was. I didn't have firsthand experience with that either. So I was very naive.
Yeah, but you were very kind as well, and
Mm.
you were very brave. And, we really thought we were doing the right thing and we thought we were moving towards a much better life, and
Mm.
I was seriously suffering from the side effects, we can't forget that. I couldn't exercise properly at all. I had aches and pains all the time. I had migraines. I didn't really have any emotions. My judgment was seriously impaired. I mean, it's almost like being on that level of lithium for that long, it made me more stupid. It made
Mm.
me much more stupid as a person, much less able to assess things and make good decisions. There's a countless list of other side effects that I've
Mm.
got written down somewhere. But we
Yeah.
had good reason to try it. But I just think going forward, we've learned a lot of lessons. And what lessons do you think that you or we have learned from it?
Well, have a backup plan. Have a crisis plan. That definitely is super important. Have good support around you. Um, and I guess also, if you do reduce medication, you have to replace it with something. Um, there has to be a good reason why it should this time you're okay without medication. So admittedly, we did sort of think we had that through the Canadian company and
The
and their
supplements.
supplements,
Yeah.
but that didn't turn out to work. So and I guess like really get expert help from people who have done this themselves. And there's so much more, available now online and professionals who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So connect with someone like that, I would say. Um, yeah.
And it's interesting because the doctors that I spoke to about it, and this is 15 years ago. In fact, it would have been 17 years because I remember it actually took 2.5 years to come off the lithium, not 1 year, as I said earlier. It was two and a
Mm.
half years. And all the doctors that I spoke to, the GPs and one psychiatrist, were very kind of almost aggressive in the way they spoke to me. They thought I was very stupid and said, "Why can't you just leave it alone?" And there was no, I mean, they were right in that it did go really badly, but they didn't meet me. They didn't really have a conversation where I could express where I was at and feel heard. And then knowing me, I would probably have not done it because I think
Mm.
a huge part of it for me was so many of my decisions and your decisions, they were kind of based around my fear that I was kind of doing this away from the authorities. I was kind of doing this, we were doing this kind of on our own ish.
Mm.
And that created this situation where had I had a doctor or a relationship with a doctor where I could really talk these things through, and then I could have gone to see the doctor every month or so and talked about how it was going, and they could have said, "Well, what about this or that?" Or, "This seems to be getting out of hand," or, but
Mm.
instead it was like, and I'm not, I don't want to be too blamey with this whole thing, but it was almost like because I wasn't met with compassion and understanding and openness about where I was at, I kind of locked the door and just tried to do it alone, which was a big, big mistake. But now my doctor, for example, go forward 15 years, my doctor, my GP is very, very cool about my medication and about the fact that I have lowered it, and we talk about it, and he's very, very understanding, and he sort of meets me where I'm at, and um, it makes the whole thing completely different, completely different.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that's very important what you're saying there because um, nobody wants to just be treated as if they're irresponsible and don't have a clue about their own situation. And when you were met like that by these psychiatrists who just basically wanted to put the lid on a very valid concern and question that you had about your medication, because they were afraid, basically, then you didn't get to have that balanced conversation with a professional. But if they'd, been more open, more interested in why, and how your situation was, then I think a lot could be avoided just by, allowing you to talk, and meet you where you're at, and then they could come with their concerns, and maybe a different plan would have come out of that, with the professional on board. But since it was this like complete rejection of what you wanted, then that didn't seem to be an option.
So if someone asked you, if someone said to you, what's it like to live? I mean, you can't really say what's it like to live with someone with bipolar because we're all so different and you're so different to everyone else. But what is it like? What has it been like being with me and me having bipolar? How's that been for you? What are the advantages, the disadvantages, the good and the bad, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's of course very hard to know what's what, what's your personality, what's a typical sort of bipolar way of being or whatever, if there even is one, I don't know. I mean, I think you're a wonderful person. I think you're very fun. You're very intelligent, creative, and interesting to be with. I mean, I think you're a great person. That's why I'm with you, obviously. Um, but on the downside, I can see, and again, what's the illness? What's medication? I don't really know. I mean, I think we discovered that high doses of lithium made you very irritable. We discovered that when you came down first time because we didn't have any fights anymore. And then when you were put on lithium again, we started having fights again. So we sort of discovered that it made you aggressive. I hated lithium because of that. you know. Um, and of course, also your mood was, and sometimes is, but not so much anymore, but was up and down, and you had bad days, both with sort of in terms of how you felt, how your outlook on life, um, how much you could tolerate in a way, how much energy you have. Like a lot of the things were very up and down. Not in an extreme way, like not like you were manic or depressed, but still more than normal. Um, but now it seems to me that had more to do with medication than the illness, because it's the less medication you take, the less that seems to be a problem.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. But it's part of the bipolar package, isn't it? Medication as well. So yeah, that's been a thing for us in our relationship, that you've had to cancel a lot of things, for instance, because it's been too much for you. Either it's been overwhelming, mentally or emotionally or physically. So that has often led to us sort of canceling plans or family events or things like that. Um, um, yeah, and basically hindered you from having a proper career for a long time in your life because you just couldn't do it. Same reasons: intellectually overwhelmed, mentally overwhelmed, physically overwhelmed, or just not capable of doing it, not capable of keeping going in a way with yeah, things that had to do with career. So that's obviously been a factor that has influenced us. It's probably more things. I can't remember anything. Can you remember anything?
Mm. Just how much fun we have and how close we are and how
Yeah.
the
Oh,
illness
yeah.
somehow has kind of brought us closer together and
Yeah, I could talk about that. Yes, I mean, and the challenges that we've gone through together has also, made us a lot closer. And even when you were having your episodes, there were things that happened during that time that was so intensely intimate and loving. Like it was like all your filters were completely gone, and I could just see you straight into your soul. And it was just incredibly beautiful and uh, intensely just loving and connected in a way that I don't think I had ever experienced before. And something I wouldn't want to be without, actually. So that was just like an incredible experience. But also us, having to work this out together, being in it together, facing challenge together. I've also had a lot of health challenges, and by the grace of God, it seems like we have always, one of us has been able to take care of the other. There's been a lot of that, but and it sounds terrible, doesn't it? It sounds like but it hasn't been. It has been with a lot of love, and we've managed to have fun and a good time, together through a lot of challenges. And our connection and intimacy and love has just grown. We do have a lot of fun. We love hanging out together. And part of that is just, we're a good match and it's lucky. But also we have faced a lot of stuff together and we've managed to go through it together. And that has definitely, bonded us more and made us closer,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've met a lot of bipolar couples or couples, and one of them has bipolar. And
Mm,
very often they are more loving and more expressive of their love than the normal couples I know.
mm.
And I think that's interesting. And obviously there's a bias in this because there will be lots of people I've met with bipolar who are now divorced, and so you don't see it. But one
Yeah.
of the things that I've experienced and that I've seen is that, bipolar can push a marriage one of two ways, really, and I imagine there are probably quite a lot of divorces within a bipolar relationship. But if somehow the couple can make it work, then often, yeah, it does lead to this intimacy that isn't that common in normal relationships. And I think for me, this kind of leads us on to this sort of idea that so often we're striving for ease and perfection and a life that works the way we want it to work. But then when life doesn't go that way, and challenges do come really hard, and we manage to get through them, it's like what we're left with is far greater than if we'd had a really easy life. And I think that's one of the things I see with a lot of people with bipolar. A lot of people with bipolar, they and their partners, they have a great sense of humor. They have a way of looking at life where they don't kind of sweat the small stuff. It's like they've got a perspective on life. They realize life can end at any point. They realize that even madness can visit anyone actually at any point, whether they have a diagnosis or not. And it's somehow it kind of maybe it just sort of wakens us up to truly living when we can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like you say, the small stuff isn't that important anymore. And there's a gratitude for having each other and, being able to help someone you love as well, and it goes both ways. Um, yeah, I don't
What
feel like I'm the helper in this relationship. I think that would feel that that was just terrible. I mean, I'm not a martyr. I'm in a relationship or this relationship because, it's good for me. I like being in this relationship. I have a good time here, but, there's challenges. So but I'm challenging too.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's important, in any relationship that there is give and take, and there is, sometimes one leans on the other and the other way around, and that we're there for each other, and otherwise it just doesn't work, The one who's always feels like, or is the helper will burn out, you know. But so that's really important, and that's not the case for us,
Mm.
luckily.
Yeah, it's been very important for me. I mean, obviously, when I was really ill, then you were kind of my carer. I mean, it played out that way. I couldn't care for myself. But
Mm.
it's always been very important for me when I start to get better or get better to sort of, yeah, try and return to my normal self as best I can and to kind of, yeah, try and do whatever I can to actually be an equal partner in the relationship. And obviously, that often takes time after an episode. It's not something I could just flick into because my brain's completely fried, my body's in pieces, and And there's a lot of stuff that, we had to work through. Episodes, they leave a lot of chaos behind them. And so you've got that emotional side as well. It's almost like with a mental illness, you've got the mental illness and the problems that that causes, particularly when there's an episode. But then you've actually got the psychological consequences of the episode that aren't just for me, but for you and for my stepson and for other people who've been involved in it. And that, yeah, it takes sort of time and understanding and a bit of help to make that right. But I think also there's tremendous growth in it and tremendous growth of understanding of that the human condition is rarely straightforward.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, no, and that's maybe something we can talk, or I can talk a little bit about too, the aftermaths of an episode. Because for me, that was actually a very challenging time. One thing is, when you're in the middle of an episode and you were completely gone, it was so obvious that it wasn't you, whatever you did. And sometimes, I even, found that hard, because you said things that, was easy to take personal. um, but it was pretty obvious that you weren't there. It was the illness, you were mad, and that sort of explained everything. But it was much more difficult when you were sort of in an in-between. You weren't quite yourself. You were depressed. You maybe sometimes still were a bit sort of in other places, but you were also there, and I could talk to you, but you weren't quite yourself. That was much more challenging for me to handle, because it was like I had to, you know, take what you said seriously and sort of, mm, yeah, you know, treat you as if you were fully there, but you weren't, and I found that very difficult.
Mm.
I didn't know how much was the illness, how much was you. Um, yeah. And of course, also there were things that I wanted to talk to you about that had happened during the psychosis period. Yeah, and you mentioned, my son, your stepson, and what he had gone through, and it took time, to come to terms with that, and for you to sort of accept your role in a way. That had affected people around you, because you were the victim, no doubt about that. It was worst for you. What you went through was much more terrible than what any of the people around you went through. But still, that didn't mean that what we went through wasn't valid and needed some attention after a while, you know. And luckily that happened, and that was very healing for us, that you were willing to be sorry for that. Basically, I think that was very important, and I thought that was very generous of you.
I
um
I thought it was very generous of you guys for forgiving me. The illness, me, whatever you want to call it, had caused a lot of chaos and affected your lives in ways that they wouldn't have been affected had I not been around. And it was when I did kind of I remember the three of us sat down and we had a long chat about it. And I remember thinking, whatever happens, I must listen. I must listen. I must really, really let these guys speak and not try and defend myself. And you guys, you talked about it and how tough it had been for you. And then I talked about it and what I'd seen, and you guys were exactly the same with me. And I remember at the end of it, you both said, "Look, we totally forgive you. We don't hold anything against you." It's like, and that made a massive difference to me. And I think
mm,
that meant that my recovery was quicker. And I think it kind of dissolved some of the fear around the whole thing. It almost meant like I became more grounded in myself and with bipolar and with you guys. It was kind of like I sort of faced what happened and I'd shared it with you guys and apologized, which I think was really important. But then after that, because you guys took it so gracefully, it's like it made a huge difference to me. It kind of created this space where I could just say, oh my God. And a lot of the guilt and the self-blame that potentially would still be hanging around now just kind of vanished in that. So I feel very lucky to have you both because you're both very forgiving characters. Mhm.
Thank you. But I do think that most people would, an honest apology, normally will be easy to accept and um, give your understanding to. And I think you're right what you said, it was like getting over that sense of shame and guilt, that can sometimes block you from actually wanting to accept that you have had an effect on your loved ones. It's almost like that's too painful to really even accept or admit to. But when you do, then you also open up for getting that understanding and that love that you need and the forgiveness that you need. So it's totally worth it. But I do understand it's not very easy, and it's not an easy thing to do. Yeah, but important for sure.
Um, how do you look after yourself, and particularly during these episodes and stuff? How did you look after yourself? Because often the person with bipolar, they're the one who gets all the attention, and the people around them, they get kind of ignored, and they often have a tendency to ignore their own needs as well because they're so taken up with caring for someone. How is that for you?
Yeah, I don't know how good a job I did with that in the beginning. Well, I did ask for help, eventually. I mean, now if it happened, I would involve more people. I would involve my family, your family. We avoided that because I guess we felt like they would judge us, for for choosing to come off the medication. And we didn't sort of need their worries on top of everything else. But now that we are so much more open about everything, then that's not really been an issue. And that would have helped, a lot. But I did involve friends and that was a good thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, during an episode, I guess the most important thing that we learned, because it happened, you had more episodes after that first one, was that we didn't resist professional help, and that helped me too, because you went to hospital and I could get a break, and we could have a family life at home, and all that, which was really, really important. And then, of course, making sure that I talk to people about how I was doing and feeling, and obviously meditating and doing things that was good for me. Um, I think I learned that after a while, but the first time I don't think I was particularly good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we've learned a lot. We've definitely learned a lot. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, we
hopefully this
have.
video might help people learn without having to go through what we went through.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned this, but I think it's part of the picture, or at least a part of our picture. I don't know how relevant it is for everyone, but to be fair, I had a period after this where I was like bedbound because I hit the wall. It wasn't I had the serious burnout. It wasn't because of your episode, but it definitely was kind of like the nail in the coffin, I would say. There was other things before that yeah, God knows what but it wasn't the cause of it. I'm pretty sure of that, but it didn't help. And luckily that happened when you were stable enough to take care of me, and you did. So there were some weeks there where I was, I couldn't even leave bed without help. So you've done your bit. Yeah, crazy stuff.
So this is quite a broad question, but what would be your advice to someone who is living with someone with bipolar and finds certain parts of it tricky? What would be your advice?
Well, like what's been very important to me has been to accept that, what happened during psychosis is the illness, and not to take any of that seriously or blame you for any of that. Yes, I needed to talk about some of it, to get it off my chest, and and it really helped that you were sorry about it. That was amazing for me. But generally, to really remember that you're dealing with an illness and not your partner. you know. I think that's been super important. Um, Even, in your moody days, whatever, I've become a lot better at handling that because I don't take it seriously and I don't take it personal, It's like I've learned finally that this is not something you want, it's just kind of like happening to you as well as me, when you're gruff and you're irritable and you you go a bit extreme in your views or whatever, whatever it is, or you're a grumpy old I know that it's not something you really want to be, it's like it just gets too much and that's what comes out, and I can't really expect that you control it because you would if you could, you know. And for me to just kind of brush it off more or make light of it or even, tease you a little bit for it helps, or just remove myself, and wait till it passes. And also I know now that the better I handle it, the more grateful you will be because you are aware of it happening.
Yeah.
It's just that, but you can't just stop it. And you are also amazing at apologizing. When you can, then you always come and you apologize for being grumpy. And the better I've been handling it, the more sweet you will be.
Yeah.
So I feel like yeah, I get a lot of credit.
Yeah.
So that helps,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
taking it
And
personal. Mm.
yeah. And for the people listening to this who have bipolar or just any very moody, grumpy people in a relationship, I'm sure there's a few of you listening. Um, like me appreciating what Haranya's doing, but me appreciating that and saying, look, I so appreciate that you handle me so well. I'm such a nightmare and you've been a total star. That makes a huge difference to her. So it's definitely like we're all empowered in this journey. When we're well anyway, we're all empowered to kind of be better versions of ourselves and to appreciate other people and actually let them know. I know living in Norway for the last 20 years or so, I see that there's a lot of people, particularly in Scandinavia, who internalize things. So they love someone loads and loads, but they don't tell them very often.
Mm.
But they really love them. They're very genuine love. And in Britain, we're kind of the same, but I was always brought up in a way to express where I was at and express my feelings. And that's really helped me with bipolar because it means I can say thank you to people. It means that after I've come out of hospital, I then would phone up the hospital a week or two later and just say, look, I just want to say thanks a million, or send them a card saying how amazing the staff were. And these are tiny little things, but they make a massive difference. People love being appreciated, and it's so important to appreciate them. And I think one of the reasons that you've stuck around, apart from my electrifying personality, is the fact that I so often tell you how great I think you are and how I so appreciate the way you handle me when I'm being bloody difficult. To be honest, I mean, you guys watching, you definitely see the best side of me when I'm sitting in front of a camera being well behaved. But yeah, I can be a grumpy old very easily. Yeah.
Yes, I mean that definitely helps. I'm not gonna diminish that fact that you knowing that you're difficult sometimes definitely takes the edge of it and helps a lot. It's like then I can just forget about it. I don't sort of grind on it anymore. So that's I'm very very grateful that's easy for you, and you are a very positive person who praises a lot and appreciates a lot, and much more than I or naturally, I hopefully have picked up a few tricks, but you're amazing like that, and that sort of exuberant personality that I think a lot of bipolar people can have, um, you know, uh, maybe, or it's just you, I don't know, but it's certainly very attractive and very, very wonderful, and in a way makes up for bad stuff, I guess. But primarily, I feel like I'm just with you because I like you and you're great. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. I mean, we've definitely tried not to let bipolar dominate our relationship. I mean, there's obviously been periods when it has, that's inevitable, but we're not
Mm.
wandering around thinking, well, Ollie's got bipolar, how's this going to work or whatever. Like, we very much embrace life as best as we can, and we Yeah, we love going out for coffees and we love going on our little adventures. Like we spent time in the UK and we spent time in Norway and we just have a lot of fun. We enjoy doing kind of the same things and we've both got very dark humors, dark sense of humor,
Mm.
and that seems to help a lot in life, being able to laugh at the things that go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you're with the person because you want to be with that particular person, not because of some kind of syndrome or illness or whatever. That's just kind of something that's thrown into the mix, isn't it? And we all have stuff. Um, I'm not this perfect angel who, I have a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, and that's how it is in all relationships. So yeah, yeah. I guess everyone is with whoever they're with because they like that person
Yeah.
primarily.
Mm.
But there are some things that can help in knowing about bipolar and how it is, I guess, and like you say, sort of make sure you take care of yourself and learn how to handle it. For me, it's definitely much easier now than it used to be.
Mm. Yeah, it's
Mm.
interesting. One thing I just remembered that because we've been through all this stuff with bipolar, that then we were then, a few years later, we were then faced with another challenge. And we handled that so much better than we would have done. And because of what we've been through, and that was Hiranya got breast cancer. And so we had that whole journey, with hospitals and operations and dealing with it and whatever. And then, literally 4 days after she'd been given the all clear, I got a call on a Sunday evening from my doctor, which you don't expect. You don't expect to have a call from your doctor on Sunday evening. And he'd removed like a freckle type thing from my knee a few days earlier and said, "Oh, I think this is probably fine, but we'll get it checked." And he told me, "You've got malignant melanoma, and you need to get it operated on Tuesday. You're booked in. You have to go to the hospital on Tuesday." And I was like, "Oh, okay, right, yeah." And so I hung the phone up and we talk about this gallows sense of humor. I then turned to Hiranya, who I actually had my arm around. We were watching TV. It was on Sunday evening. And I turned to her, I said, "Baby, you won't believe this, but you've gone and given me cancer." And that kind of sums up, I think, where we've sort of come to and the ability to laugh at things. But then what was so cool about it was my experience with the whole thing was really very good. The Norwegian health system was just incredibly kind to me, incredibly good to me. It worked really, really well. They were also, in general, they were brilliant with Hiranya, apart from Dr. Death, who we won't go into in this podcast. But they were really, really good with Hiranya. And what I found with the whole thing was we both were able to support each other in a very kind of balanced, loving, fun way. And so, from my perspective, we actually had fun going to different hospitals and meeting different people and interacting with different doctors and nurses. And we both ended up all clear. And so, it was this wonderful sort of happy ending. But I wondered, how was your experience of it? Do you see it the same way as I do, or?
I mean, you're completely institutionalized and love hospitals and find that very weird, and I can't relate to that at all. Actually, I hospitals scare me. I don't feel very comfortable there. Um, but in terms of sort of handling the bad news well and sort of taking it in our stride, yeah, probably. It helped that we'd already gone through quite a lot together. And I would say also, having meditated for so long definitely helped in just staying present and not going into fear and stuff. And we were also very lucky with that it was, you know, early stages and it was very operable and it went really well. So, uh, all in all, it wasn't such a terrible experience, was it?
No, no.
But yeah, we managed to have a good summer despite double cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, sometimes you wonder what's going on. We think, well, who's putting something in the drinking water?
It was very strange. Yeah.
But I guess probably one other thing that has been very bonding for us and helped a lot with bipolar is that we're both kind of we're on the same spiritual journey, we're on the same spiritual path. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and that's something that we share that's super important for both of us. And that makes our relationship unique in that way, that we share that. And, for both of us, is such a major focal point and major important part of our life that we would have done individually without each other. But being together, it's an amazing help and inspiration to, to keep that in the foreground in a way, and to be able to grow together spiritually and to share those insights and difficulties and laugh about it. And I think that's been like an incredible part of our journey together, and I'm super grateful for that. And I think it has immense value, and it's not for everyone, but we're lucky that's kind of our deal. I think that's a big part of why we are even together, and it makes it work. We understand each other's desire in that area, and each other's challenges and victories and outlook on life. Um, you know, it, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing we're talking about is a practice called the Ashire's Ascension that we've been doing for, gosh, over 20 years. But I wanted to ask you how ascending or meditating, um, how that has helped you deal with your own health challenges, but and also with having a partner who's had the bipolar issues. How's it helped you?
Well, in general, meditation, gives you access to more calm, to your peaceful place. So for me, it's meant that I can find inner stability and peace more easily during challenges. It also, actually, sitting down and meditating also is like very refreshing and recharging of your batteries. So in that respect too, it's been, a way to sort of catch up and get in balance again. But it's also giving me like such a different outlook on life, much more positive outlook on life. Not to worry about that shit happens, the more accepting of everything that happens, more able to just be present with what's now and not going to the future of and worrying about stuff. I guess also like having a more sort of broad perspective of that things happen for a reason. This is part of our growth. Just that this gives life more meaning, I would say, to have a spiritual path, that you can put things into perspective, and uh, yeah, it becomes more meaningful and more positive in that way. Um, yeah, everything happens for my growth, and I can use it as such. I can use it as something that can remind me of finding my peace again. So it's been super important for handling life in general, and particularly when life's tough. Then it's invaluable to have a practice where you find your stability and you find your peace again. Yeah, I think it's been a lifesaver.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think finding a like when I talk about spiritual path, basically Hiranya and I became Ishayas, which is basically people who are dedicated to finding more peace and love and joy in ourselves. And then if other people are interested in that through meditation, then we teach them meditation and that kind of we do that together as well a lot, which is really fun.
Mm.
But it's very interesting because one of the things that I've experienced being bipolar is that a lot of the traditional ways of finding happiness, those would be like things like success, things like achievement. It could be physical achievement, it could be artistic achievement. It could just be having an impressive career or a good career, even that one enjoys, different things. For some people, it would be having children, different people have different things. But a lot of those were either sort of cut away from me or I didn't have the opportunity to do that, because of my health. And what I found when I'd kind of been on my spiritual path for a while, what I started to realize was that the way that I was seeing life was very different to the way I'd seen it before. Before, I thought I could find my happiness by creating a really good life, or by being around lots of friends, or by, yeah, being successful. But when a lot of those things were kind of disappeared, I actually started to realize that I could find a lot of peace and happiness within myself. And then the more I found that peace and happiness, the more naturally, not always, but often life would kind of mirror it. Life would kind of be more fun and more interesting and all that stuff. And so in a funny way, my biggest aim in life is to be at peace, is to be happy, is to just really live life, however life is. And a lot of what was blocking that for me, a lot of what was blocking my happiness was my desire to live a happy life and keep trying to change it and achieve this and achieve that. And that was one of the reasons why I got a job as a sales trader at Merrill Lynch. I wanted to make loads of money and then buy a place on the beach in Thailand and then find peace and happiness there and kind of live a financially free life. Lots of people think that if they're financially free, they'll be happy. But it didn't work out that way. Bipolar wouldn't let that happen. And so instead, what's happened is I've had to put whoops, dropping my pen. I've had to put a lot of focus on finding that peace and happiness within and creating a much more humble life, actually, a life that isn't particularly impressive, that isn't full of amazing things that I've done and all this stuff, but a life that supports peace and happiness and connection, with my wife and with the other people who are close to me, my parents, my stepson, some of my friends. And interestingly enough, and this is just what I believe, so I don't want to impose my beliefs on other people. But I believe in reincarnation. I don't believe that we just have this life. If we just have this life, which is what a lot of people, I think, strangely believe, I don't know why they believe that, because to me, it makes sense that we would have many lives, and we've got one now. Why not have other ones? But many people believe that this is it. This is your one chance, and you just got to go for it and just do what you can to have fun or happiness or whatever, which very often they don't find, or at least they don't find it for long periods of time. But I go more with the old sort of Indian sort of Vedic system where we reincarnate on earth to learn things and to grow in our experience of love and kindness and laughter and forgiveness and connection. Or perhaps some people incarnate to learn a lesson. Maybe they incarnate in a terrible situation where people are really mean to them because they need to learn to stand up for themselves, or they need to learn forgiveness, or whatever it is. But I guess what I'm saying is, because I have what I think is a broader perspective of life, I think there's a bigger picture at play. It makes being bipolar and the problems that have come with that a lot easier to handle. If I was just a materialist, if I was just totally scientific and I just thought this is it, I've just got to make the most of it, I would find that very depressing, actually. But instead, I've done my best, like you, Hiranya. I've done my best to take the challenges and long term use them to find more peace and happiness, and so far it's working.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that outlook on life is changes things, and your circumstances, they don't become the deciding factor whether you're happy or not. And that's a very good thing when circumstances are a bit bleak. But and so in that way, it's actually like an advantage, because it's an invitation to look for happiness in other places, like go inside instead. And the irony of that is that the more peace and happiness you find inside, the more it seems to happen on the outside too. Or you also appreciate small things more, like you find more joy in everyday things. That's definitely my experience. I find joy in so many things, and laughter comes easily. I see beauty in a lot of stuff around. I'm not so hard to please. And because I'm present and I see things, I see what I'm given. I have more gratitude naturally. But also there's a distinct flow to life now, that I notice, that I think comes from this different way of seeing life through a spiritual path, through meditation, through inner peace.
That's awesome. Well shared. I'm just looking to see if there's any more questions.
Mm.
Feta cheese, coconut yogurt. Oh no, that's the shopping list. So obviously, most of the listeners know that I've been eating the ketogenic diet for about 3 years, and it's had a huge positive effect on my condition. What did you think when I turned up and I said I'm going to be part of a scientific study and I'm going to eat the ketogenic diet and I'm hoping it's going to help me with bipolar?
Well, I think I was all for it. I've been, as you know, been trying a myriad of different diets and gone all in with all of them and making the most of it. I like a challenge like that, and to see if I can make delicious food with the limitations that a certain diet sort of has. That's sort of why, by the way, I tried diets to get the challenge. Is more, trying to get healthier. But so yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting. And I thought it was quite fun to learn about it and to make keto food that was tasty.
Yeah, I mean, you were a huge part of my success. If you hadn't helped me with the measuring and the weighing and the figuring out the different foods, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I was on a very high dose of lithium at that time. And so cognitively, it was difficult even just to make recipes and weigh food and put it in the plate and whatever. And you were a godsend, you know?
Yeah, and it's pretty clear that you got very overwhelmed by the count of carbohydrates and all that, and that I could easily, step in and help you with that. And I guess I naturally understand those things as well quite easily. So that was great. Yeah, and I think it's fun to try new things.
Did you notice
Having,
any? Sorry, you go.
mm. No,
Did you
I was
know?
going to say, having said that, I wasn't really sort of entering the keto diet myself fully. I guess I just went more low carb because I like, a variety of veggies and I like fruit. And so I kept on sort of eating that, and adjusting a little bit, but not, it was pretty easy to do it simultaneously.
And what changes have you noticed in me being on the keto diet?
Well, I mean, so many things have happened, haven't they? I mean, primarily what you kind of have reported in many ways, that you feel calmer um, and more sort of stable. And I guess I noticed that too, but I think primarily what the biggest change has been that you have been able to reduce lithium and the health benefits that come from that, you know, and probably keto too. Like they go hand in hand, don't they? Because keto seems to heal your brain so that you don't need so much medication. And yeah, both less medication and healing your brain is connected and very, very good and leads to great things. So I guess I've seen you become healthier and healthier really these over these years that you've been doing it. Of course, it hasn't been just easy, and it still is quite difficult to get a handle on this tapering that you're doing. There's so many factors, and it's not easy to know what's what.
When you say tapering, can you explain that for people listening?
Well, yeah, well, tapering is a term for just coming off your medication super
Yeah.
slowly.
Or coming down from
Yeah, coming
medication.
down. Yeah, not coming off necessarily. Yeah, and that's important to say. That's not necessarily a goal. The goal is to find a place where you are as healthy as we think you can be, and stable. But so far, it doesn't seem like we've found your limit in a way.
What do you
And
mean
the
by that?
tapering.
What do you mean
Hmm?
by that? What do you mean by that?
I mean that when you like, so you've been coming off like in very, very small portions, your
For,
lithium
for,
dose.
for three and a
Uh,
half years.
yes, but it's primarily been you've done it in a way that you lower when it feels like you have too much lithium in your system. yeah, when you recognize the sort of signs of I'm too high in lithium in a way, or there's that sort of sensation, that I'm over medicated, then you've gone down. And that has kept happening and kept happening and kept happening, that you get that feeling. So, and then you come down and you have a period of relief and you're feeling better. And also a little bit of, time adjusting that isn't always easy either. Don't need to maybe say too much about that, but, that's part of the picture. But then it's always been, again, creeping up that sense of that you're over medicated. So, and that's still happening, is what I mean. So, you've had some times where you decided that, okay, I'm staying on this dose now for a while, which has been a good thing to do, I think, but it hasn't been so far possible to find that place where you don't start feeling over medicated again. So for the time being, I guess we're still looking for that spot, and whether that is, a certain amount of lithium or if it's no lithium, we don't know, at the time being. And that's also a bit scary in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being so open and honest. And yeah, your openness and your honesty, I think it's going to help a lot of people. You've been a total star for me. I mean, you really have. You've just been absolute lifesaver, wonderful companion, wife, partner, just the best. And thank you for coming on the podcast and no doubt getting lots of ratings because you're so beautiful and clever and clever. Cheerio. Bye.